And welcome to the 13th floor in Auckland. It's 7 o'clock in the morning and just getting light out. So I guess the first thing I need to find out from you, you're in Chicago, right?
I am.
And of course, everybody here down under is watching what's going on CNN and everything. And I guess a firsthand report would be a good thing to start off with. How are things there?
Well, so I'm about 20 miles outside of Chicago, and there's even kind of chaos here, even in the suburbs, really.
Right.
And so it's everywhere. And Chicago is, last night I guess there was a peaceful protest till 9 o'clock the curfew, and then after like 11 o'clock at night, then all hell broke loose and everything. So proving once again that the majority of the people are peaceful. And I read something interesting though that after Martin Luther King was assassinated, there was 6 days of rioting, and on the 6th day they signed the Civil Rights Act.
Right.
Which kind of then would almost argue that if they weren't protesting, would anyone be listening? Or if there wasn't, if the cities weren't on fire.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I sit with all that, but I know you can't be indifferent to it, because if you're indifferent in a time like this, then you're on the side of the oppressor.
I have to agree with that, I'm afraid. Yeah. I mean,
where are you from, Marty?
Well, actually, I was born in England, but I grew up in the States. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania and then Rochester, New York.
Oh, wow, great.
And I moved to New Zealand about 26 years ago.
Oh, yeah. How'd you end up there?
Just being smart, I guess. Myself and my family congratulate ourselves every day that we're here.
Yes. Good move.
Yeah, I think so. Have you ever been down here?
I haven't. No, I haven't been. And I was thinking about it today that there was a priest, and I don't, I was young, but I was an altar boy. And there was a priest in Michigan that he was from New Zealand. And that was like, how did you end up in this little town in Michigan? But
Right.
Yeah. The prime minister seems badass. Seems amazing.
Oh, she's amazing, man.
I mean, amazing. Yeah, and born in 1980 or something.
Yeah, I think she's 38 now. She's getting on.
Yeah, right.
So the first thing I want to talk about is this song and the album, What in the World? But the song, I just heard it for the first time a couple of days ago, and it sounds like you wrote it like as things were happening. Obviously you didn't, but tell me what you're thinking about it now.
Yeah, so obviously, being a Cub fan, the Cubs in I think it was November 2nd of 2016. So the world became a perfect place for me for before Donald Trump was elected, and I watched it in the same room. So the room, I since I've been sober, I write every morning. It's like my routine, and so I would just start freeform, and so I had all these just as the Trump started deconstructing organized society and saying these things. I mean, this is kind of like this is like his wet dream, really. I think total chaos, being able to implement military forces. I mean, this is kind of what I think it's always been going towards, and everyone's like, nah, he's not going to do that. He's a lot of bluster, and that's true. But this is kind of what it was all kind of going to. And it's not that I thought that. It was a worst case scenario, that these things. But then the song literally could be rewritten every week. And we did a few versions of the video because, things changed so fast in this Trump world that you could update that video to have new calamities every week. It could be a new video literally every week. And it'd be almost completely different. So as I was writing, it was just, free-form writing. And I liked a lot of the things that were kind of coming together. But I didn't have, like, a chorus, So I thought it was just, I had all this up into the, what in the world is happening here? I thought, that's good. But there's no real, like, chorus, And so I didn't force it. I just kind of let it sit. And, then new lines would come and I changed things. And then I had the chorus. And then the concern with the chorus was, it's a terrible message to send.
Right.
It's not, hey, we're going to get through this at all. It's, it's not. And
you basically say dark days are coming for the USA.
Yeah. And I played with that line, like dark days are here, good days are coming. Right. I thought that just seemed inauthentic. And so yeah, but it was it was real, and I knew they were coming, and they're here, So it's a very downtrodden anthem, it's not a,
Yeah.
and I'd gladly not sing the song anymore after November 4th.
Right. Well, we'll see what happens. That
Yeah,
would
we'll
be
see.
nice.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's
Yeah,
a great song anyway.
yeah, right. But what's going to happen? How quick are things going to change with anybody? And that's the scary thing. And they always say Trump is just a symptom, man. He's just they produced him, and that's true. It's been a sick country for a long time.
Right. So, have you had lockdown? Have you pretty much been ensconced in your place?
For almost 3 months. I was on the West Coast. Like, I remember it was the first day of a tour, and I was like, and they were like, this new COVID case, the first COVID case was like Sacramento. And I was like, I was in Sacramento, and then I was outside of Kirkland where the old folks home. And it was like, I thought my agent's trying to kill me because I have a whole tour of the COVID tour. I was like following the trail.
Right, right.
And, people getting on planes and, people starting to get nervous. So my last show was March 13th, and then I've been indoors since.
Right, right.
Yeah,
so, I know a lot of people are kind of moving their release dates around. Your album is coming out this week. Did you ever think about changing things around?
I thought about it, but I thought, if anything, my wife was like, this record needs to be out now. Like, we put it out in March, and I was like, but if anything, are people on the phones less? No, they're on the phones more. People are more glued to the TV. I know I am. It's like a shackle. It's like a slavery chain that I carry this thing around, and it's awful. And, so I think, if anything, there's a very captive audience out there. And I just think it's important. I think I released the song earlier, just to get it out there, and, if it's only that song, then fine.
Yeah. I mean, I know I have more time to listen now, which is a beautiful thing. So I assume everybody else does.
Watch more movies. And I know you're a film fan. I want to talk to you about movies at some point too, but yeah, so I didn't think why wait? Right.
So I'm hoping to just kind of run down a couple of the songs on the record to get people involved in what you're doing. After What in the World, there's this tune called New York, Texas. And of course I had to Google it to see if there really was a New York, Texas. Not only is there, but there's also a Texas, New York.
Is there?
Yes. But it sounds like New York, Texas is about 20 people. Have you been there? What was the inspiration?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I was touring through Texas, and I would see that sign, and I always giggled whenever I saw it, like New York, Texas.
Right.
And so that's even the line the characters say. I wonder if it's even real. And that was kind of the thing. And so in Texas, it can be very cinematic there. And I was driving through all these towns, and I was staying out at a ranch, and I was driving through this town, Ben Wheeler, which I also used in the song. And as a drug addict, I know I could sniff them out,
Right.
And I was like, so I was driving through this little town, and I was like, oh man, my senses were, they were peaking. The meters were way over.
Right,
so
right.
After the show that night, I drove back to Murchison, Texas, where I was staying. And but yeah, New York's right by there, and so I would ask him about it. But I said, what's the town Ben Wheeler? I just thought it was a funny name. Like, who was Ben Wheeler? What? And he said, oh, biggest drug capital in the world. I said, I knew it. But so anyway, that's kind of the story that kind of came out of and it's funny, in Texas, you could turn a corner in some little town and see a bunch of hobos standing around a trash can on fire, and it's just like you walked into some weird indie film. Like it's all very, it's very cinematic down there. It still is.
Yeah. Well, there was Paris, Texas, I guess. So.
Right.
That does help. But you mentioned drug addiction and alcoholism, and a lot of that stuff is in the songs throughout the record, and all sorts of kind of dark and negative things. Yet the overall vibe of the record is still kind of uplifting. Did you have to think about that when you were making the record?
I don't. It's just that I as a survivor, I think it just kind of permeates out through it because I've made it, and it's a miracle. And so yeah, I hope that comes through, because I don't like despondent music. I don't listen. It's what's the point? So I want it to be hopeful, and that if I can make it, literally anybody can. And I don't speak to people as if I'm better, but is because I'm worse. I was way worse.
Right.
And so, if anything, I want to say that it's the whole world is really on a spectrum of addiction, really on some level. I mean, everybody, especially now, in the device and the phone and the food and the porn and the Twitter and the social media. And, I mean, Jesus Christ, take your pick. There's
Yeah,
a addiction for anybody. I have a 9-year-old girl that I'm worried about just on the phone.
sure.
And she gets cranky, and you can see it because she's not getting her fix when you take the phone away. And I know the patterns of addiction.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
scary.
Yep, yep. Now, the next song on the record is Blue Eyed Barmaid, which I've never heard it. Nietzsche and Delamitri is right. I thought that was classic. And car seat, you mentioned car seat headrest, which is the first in the song, I think.
Totally.
But it sounds like it's it's storytelling at its best. Is it something that you're drawing from in real life, or are you just making this stuff up? Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's kind of my wheelhouse, I guess. Those songs are harder to write, the real story songs. But I come from an old folk background. I was after the John Prine era in Chicago of folk singers. But I mean, that's kind of that was my formative years were Earl of Old Town, and I was a kid. I was just like this, really ridiculously wanting to be Bob Dylan, reading Ginsberg with sunglasses on while all the 30-year-old folks were like, who is that fucking kid, man?
Why not?
Sitting in a dark pub, just reading a novel. But it was some kid like really trying to find himself. And so I mean, that's where I learned all that stuff. And then I used to play with this Irish singer, and the songs we would do were just old traditional songs. So I didn't grow up necessarily. My introduction was songs that were so old that no one knows who wrote them.
Right.
That was really good schooling for me. Not like, oh, this was on Joe's third record. Whatever. He wrote this song because he had to fulfill some publishing deal, and so he wrote this song. It's just like who wrote this song? Nobody knows. And so it was good. It was it's in my DNA.
Yeah. Now, speaking of your DNA, and you mentioned Dylan, and so I've just discovered you in the last couple of weeks, and of course, the first thing I heard was Springsteen and Dylan, and a bit of Tom Petty in there. And you even, in the next song, The Things That You Want, you even mentioned the Springsteen or Dylan thing. And I'm just wondering how you feel about being compared with that. Is that annoying, or is it an honor?
Well, at first it's like, be careful what you wish for, I always wanted those comparisons. And then, but like when, I was first in Rolling Stone and I was like 20 years old, and they've said, when you look like Jordan Knight from New Kids on the Block and sound like Bruce Springsteen, things get worse from a kid from Chicago. I was like mortified, I was like, oh no, this is my moment. And then it's going to be Bruce and Jordan Knight. So anyway, then it was like 1991, Nirvana just hit, Pearl Jam, and I was a kid, so I started getting into that kind of thing. So I spent a lot of years foolishly trying to avoid Bruce and I don't listen to Bruce, which was ridiculous because I did. I studied him. And so now, it's okay. And so, I mean, why not talk about it? It's like the elephant.
Fair enough.
I should just reference him on every album.
Yeah, right. Now, The Veils of Veronica is a pretty dark tune, stuck right in the middle of the record there. I'm wondering if you can kind of touch on, I mean, I'm assuming it's kind of dealing with suicide and.
It is. Yeah, so I got goosebumps right now. So on June 1st, my niece killed herself. My nephew killed himself. And then 2 days later, on June 3rd, his sister, my niece, she killed herself. And they both killed themselves. They were both drunk, 2 days apart. My brother lost 2 kids in 3 days. And Aaron and I, we had a similar path with addiction, and she was in jail like me, and so we had a lot of things in common. We didn't. One of the last times I saw her, she came over to the house. And it was 10 in the morning, and where I am right now, and I was cleaning out the garage doing something I didn't want to be doing, and she came up, pulled up, and she was wasted, and I was just and I wasn't very kind to her, and my wife even said, "Damn, you were cold," But I just didn't want to deal with the drunk at 10 in the morning while I'm cleaning the garage, and that was my last interaction with her, which I'll never forgive myself for being that cold, because she called an hour before she shot herself, and called my wife's phone, but my wife said she wasn't calling for me; she was calling for you. I was at my daughter's softball game, and we saw that she called, and we thought she was calling to commiserate over the death of her brother just 2 days before that, and we were all in trauma, suffering trauma, but we didn't know. And then my sister called and said, "Aaron just killed herself." I literally just was like, "No, that," it was incomprehensible. So the Veils of Veronica is about her, really, and it was she was just broken, really, really broken person, But I hope, I don't believe that people are, beyond saving. I don't think that, and I don't think if she wasn't drunk, Marty, she wouldn't have done it. It was.
Yeah, I mean, suicide's a big problem, believe it or not, in New Zealand, especially
Yeah.
among young people, and it's a beautiful country. It's a wonderful place to be, and why would that happen? And it's just something in there that is literally killing these people. I know somebody that I'm friends with just passed away 3 weeks ago. Just while we were all in lockdown. It's a terrible thing.
He killed him. He or she killed himself. Really? Yeah. See, that's what I worry about too. Is the lockdown is being isolated. I mean, suicide comes from isolation, and that's when you could go see anybody or reach out and go to anybody's house. But now, I don't know how I would have handled it. In addiction, state of addiction.
And do you think about when you're writing these songs and putting them on records? Do you kind of go back and forth as to, is this too much? Is this too heavy?
Yeah, because my brother, he hasn't heard it yet. And what happened though, Marty, and it's true, it's in the last verse that we were setting up for Christmas, and my daughter, we're getting the ornaments out in the boxes that you don't only see once a year, and then there was a gift, and my daughter was like, oh, and then she's like, oh, and she's like, it's for Aaron, and I was like, oh Christ, and then so my wife's like, we'll put it under the tree, and I was like, oh my God, it's almost morbid,
Yeah.
But so that's in the last song. That's what happens, and that's what really happened. So I worry about my brother's reaction to it.
All right. And then after that, of course, just to brighten things up, is "Die With Me."
I thought we'd just get it all out of the way. Let's the elephant in the room. Let's just talk about this real quick, and then we'll move on to Contender or whatever. But yeah, that's a similar thing. It's going to be interesting how the reaction to that goes.
And then Contender comes on, and it's kind of this bouncy, rocking thing with the saxophone, which is kind of a, whoo, I made it.
That's not by chance. That's totally, intentional to get people to go, holy shit.
And do you think about that do you still think in terms of albums and how things flow from one to the next?
I do. Yeah, and I try to, because then it was like, Veils of Veronica, Contender, Die With Me. It's like too manic and too herky-jerky, so let's just take it down and, as far as you can go, and then try to rebuild it up. So yeah, that was definitely intentional, and but yeah, so it's yeah, and I didn't even know what to call the record, but it's like all these things, just kind of like, I just found myself just going like, what? Like, there's the phrase I just got noticing was coming out of my mouth.
And Mother Emmanuel follows that, which is of course about those 4 kids that were shot in Charleston.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, it must be tough to write these songs and to sing them. How is it when you perform them? I mean, obviously you haven't performed in a couple of weeks, but
no, I haven't. Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting because I ran the record yesterday because I got these shows coming up. But so I do. So you know what I'm doing for Mother Emmanuel? I thought in the intro I go like this. Mother Emmanuel, won't you please come to Chicago, Mother Emmanuel? So I was going to make a whole record about Mother Emmanuel. I was down there, and I had the idea because there were 9 victims, and Dylan Roof was a victim, but he's part of the story. So I thought, holy shit, I had this very crystallized idea about what a record could be, like really just each character, and then maybe one song about the night of, and then Dylan Roof, and I'd go down and I'd interview all these people, and I'd go to jail and interview Dylan Roof. And I have a friend who's a New York Times bestselling author, TJ English, who writes true crime, and he said, dude, this is amazing, I'll help you, and oh my God, let's do it. And then so I got in touch with the pastor down there, and it didn't go so well. And
right.
He wasn't too open to the idea, and I get it. Some white guy from Chicago, what, you're going to come down and try to, And that was shortly after it happened. And then, so I just started I got legal pads, and I had all this information on everybody. And I thought he'll come around to the idea and introduce me to the families. And he never did. And so then it was just kind of like I got so invested in it that I wrote this song. And there's another more of a Dylan version of this, where it's like Hurricane, where I have like every character that like 15 minutes long, But I couldn't. I just thought, I wanted to get some of it to be talked about. That's all. And
right.
It'll never be a record. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how these go. And you just gotta be very delicate, because I wouldn't want the show to ever be a drag for anybody.
Now, I assume that no matter what kind of addresses your drinking situation or lack thereof these days. So it's been what, like 6 years since you've drunk?
6 years, on January 14th, and but really that whole song, I love that song, but the whole song could just be at the very end, "You're worth it." At the mantra at the end, like don't give up no matter what, you're worth it. And that was kind of really, I wrote that after Ryan and Aaron, and that's kind of the whole heart of the song. The rest of it was just about my own, like how badly I was trying to kill myself, but really, it's never late. It's never too late. So
do you have a regular band that is on the record? I don't know I didn't get the credits, so I don't know who's playing what.
Yeah, so the first two songs, the first song we did with my band in Chicago. The rest of the guys it's like Will Kimbrough, John Dederick, Lex Price, and then my drummer here, Stephen Gillis. We do, but we do it mostly remotely, so I'd send stuff to Lex, and he mixes it and send it, and then Will plays guitar and sends it, and so that's kind of how we do it now.
It's amazing that you can do that, and it still sounds like rock and roll.
And starting it with we did that. What in the World was really live. It was a couple of takes. And so that's what kind of then your brain goes, oh, a real band, and then as you get onto it, you forget it, you don't think about it. So.
Yeah, and there's some violin on it, Until I Found You, so I was wondering where that came from.
That's my wife,
Oh, so, is it? Okay. Because you guys have a band on the side, don't you?
Yeah, called the Westies.
Yeah, the Westies.
Yeah, which is that's how I met TJ English, because he wrote this book, The Westies, about the Irish gangs in New York and the West Side, and everybody thought they were like a serious, like in the 60s, 70s days. They thought they were like a real force. The Italian mob was even worried about these guys because they were killing so many people. They thought there was this huge organization, but really it was just like 12 drunk Irish guys. The Italians were like, "What is this monstrous gang?" But it was like a bunch of just drunk Irish lunatics. So that we have a band called the West.
And then, of course, the 11th song, which is Positively Central Avenue, obviously a little nod to Mr. Dylan again, right?
Oh, yeah. He's the he's the guy, So and I lived in New York for a while too. That's so it's so much of my my template for working.
Yeah, and the thing I really wanted to ask you was, I can tell by the references you make in your songs, like you mentioned Wounded Knee, and I'm American. I grew up in the 50s and 60s in the States in the 70s, and there's stories and things that you know about that form your idea of what America is. Do you see that is changing now with what's going on there?
Well, yeah, so I was thinking this morning too, is it the end of something or is it the beginning of something? And that's kind of, I guess, easy, but it feels like, like when an astronaut comes back into the atmosphere, it's a bumpy ride. And I always said, even when Trump was elected, I said, in spite of himself, he might make things better. He might get the country to a better place. But it's a perfect storm of, the phone, the social media, everything, the self-obsession, the whole thing. It's a very inflamed world. And, when something's inflamed, even the slightest touch, you go, oh, fuck, that hurt. Right. Like everyone's feeling that. Everyone's very, and I guess they call that a snowflake or whatever, but everyone's inflamed. So it's the sense of inflammation and mental illness, man. This fucking country's crazy, and it's unaddressed. It's all unaddressed stuff that, we don't talk about. And it's time. And that is my hope. Will anything change? God, I don't know, man. I sure hope so. I've taken this time to, I'm doing these weird breathing exercises. I'm taking cold showers. Now I'm doing like anything I can. I'm taking 3 master classes, one with David Mamet, one with
Man.
Gladwell. You know, I'm just, you know, anything. So when I go back out there, I'm different, and I'm hopefully a better contributor to it.
It's going to be an interesting thing when everybody starts getting together again. And is there a different vibe about everything?
Why are they so anxious to go rebuild the Tower of Babel? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, no one was happy. Was anybody? People are all bitching about like they want to go back to. You hated your job, man. What do you want to go back to work for? Well, you know, I'm just being on the train. You hated the train. It was always packed. You couldn't get in the city. It took forever. People fired next thing. But you know, like, what is this rush to go back to what?
Right.
You know, it's amazing what we can do. They shut down airlines. They shut down the skies. Everyone went inside. What's possible is amazing. I mean, what little things we've shown that we could do that. So, you know, like, what can we do though? Is it just shut? Is it a pause button, or are we going to really?
Well, let's hope that this all turns into something positive and a better place. And hopefully, you can come down to our place at some point and play for us. It would be mighty awesome.
That would.
So good luck with the record. Thank you for taking time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed the record.
It was my honor. I was so thrilled to do it. I'm so glad you liked it.
All right. Well, have a good day and stay safe in Chicago.
Thank you. You too. See you. Bye.
Bye.